All right, everybody, how's it going? My name is Miguel, founder of CFS Recovery. Today, I'm here to answer your guys' questions, but also this is going to be a training on recovery. We're going to talk about a few different things. We're going to try to make this as jam-packed as possible. We're going to be talking about, one, how to handle flare-ups. We're going to talk about progress cycles, and we're also going to talk about the fundamentals of building capacity. I got some really exciting stuff ready for you guys today. Got some visuals. I'm going to be doing some drawing a little bit so you guys can visually understand what I'm saying, hopefully. But let's jump right into it. Let's see where everybody is from. I see a few people popping in here already. Just comment where you're from. Let's see which country you're from, which city. Let's see where everybody is from. How's it going? We have Letitia. We got Dolphy. We have Maday or Madai. How's it going? Nice to see everybody in here. We have Sweden in the house. Maine, USA as well. Nice to see you. Principality of, I'm definitely going to butcher that. Somewhere in Europe. Liechtenstein, I think. Germany, maybe? We got Nicholas, West Virginia, USA, Germany in the house. We have Switzerland. I was in Germany last year, actually, doing a little Thriver tour. We're going back. I'm going back with the whole CFS recovery team to Portugal in September for the Thriver meetup. That's going to be awesome. Switzerland. We got Toronto, Czech Republic, Bucharest, Romania. Awesome. Okay. Let's wait for some people to trickle in here. Also, how long have you guys been dealing with your symptoms for? Just out of curiosity. How's it going, Jesse? I was just in Kelowna for, I believe it was Canada Day long weekend. Nice to see you, Jesse. We got Finland in the house. Let's see how long you guys have been dealing with this stuff for. How many years? How many years or months you've been dealing with CFS or long COVID or fibromyalgia? This hypersensitive nervous system. Got 15 months over here. We have 7 months, 4.5 years, 15 years since around 2002. 3 months, 3 years. So kind of ranges all across the board. I myself personally dealt with a lot of the debilitating symptoms for about 4.5 years. It's kind of hard to tell when it really started, but it really started to interfere with life when I was about 19 years old. When I was about 23 and a half, that's when I really got my life back. Most of you guys know my story. Was completely bedridden for 8 months. Spent 2 months in the hospital. It was not a fun time. Dealt with over 50 symptoms, but today I am thriving. 0 symptoms. Haven't felt symptoms for a long time, and I have full trust and faith in my body. So, that's ideally the goal to get you guys to, right? We want you guys to be thriving and live with thriving health to the point where you're no longer thinking about having to pace yourself or feel like you're walking on eggshells in life, wondering when the next flare up is going to come. So, all righty. Well, who here has experienced some flare-ups before? Because that's going to be the first topic, how to handle flare-ups. For some of you, this is going to be going back to the basics. I talk about this in almost every single video on my YouTube channel. And if you're in any of our programs, then we talk about it quite extensively. All right, somebody is in a flare-up right now. Okay, let me just double check real quick, make sure we are streaming on Facebook, and then we'll get right into it. Let's see. Let me just share this to just going to share this to the Facebook group, and we will be good to go. Come join the Give me like 10 more seconds. Just posting. Everyone. We are live now. All righty. Yep, people are starting to trickle in. Okay, so handling flare-ups. Okay, what are flare-ups? First of all, flare-ups are basically your body telling you that you've stimulated the nervous system quite a bit, and it's starting to have this kind of auto response. It starts to perceive any kind of stimulus as danger, right? And all symptoms are limiters your brain is placing on your body. I'm gonna turn the fan on. It's getting hot in here. That's all symptoms are. Okay, because at the most primal level, what's really driving a lot of these symptoms is your brain and your nervous system being stuck in fight or flight mode. So I will share my screen here. I'm going to do some drawings. Open up my... Okay. Let me find the best setup for this. Yeah, probably this. Okay, so you guys can see my screen, right? I think you guys can. So basically, the way it works is any kind of stimulus that comes in, you have a stimulus over here. Let me actually make it a bit smaller. You have some kind of stimulus, right, which leads to a reaction in your body. Now, normally, your nervous system reacts one way, right? It's just going to perceive the stimulation as completely normal, whether that's physically doing more, standing up a bit longer, walking around, taking a shower, eating, things like that. It's going to do one of two things. The normal route, this is for a completely normal person, it's just going to naturally process that stimulation. I'm just going to write over here, stimulation. Okay, stimulation comes in. Then naturally process stimulation, just like a regular person, right? So you can walk and the sensations in your legs, your heart rate increasing a little bit, it's completely normal, and your body can go back to a baseline level. It can revert back to normal. Unlike with CFS, a lot of the times it's like this runaway train of symptoms or sensations. Like this, there's a stimulation glitch. So you might have some kind of stimulation. You get up and walk, or you go do something physical, and you start to feel some symptoms, and then it snowballs from there because a lot of the symptoms turn into a lot of fear and emotions. The biggest thing that happens when you have flare-ups is you start to question recovery. You start to think, did I do too much? Am I going to crash? Did I slow down the recovery process? Am I going backwards? Did I just cancel out all my progress, right? Now that would be an example of going down this route, right? And this is where you can stimulate that fight or flight or survival mode in your brain, right? Most of the time, the way our brain and nervous system is wired when you have a hypersensitive nervous system is almost all the stimulation, or a majority of it, it's going to start here, it's going to go this route, and then you're naturally just going to go into fight or flight survival mode. This is why almost everything you do, right, depending on where you're at in recovery, a lot of the things you do can trigger that fight or flight or survival mode. And the higher this is, the more symptoms you're going to have. Okay, I'm just going to write here, fight or flight survival mode equals increase of symptoms. Okay. The thing is, symptoms themselves, right? That is like extra stimulation on your body, right? And if we don't respond well to it, it can become this feedback loop where the symptoms essentially leads to more stimulation. So you're stuck in this kind of cycle, you know. Now there is a physical component to it, right? Because you are feeling physical symptoms in your body. I'm not saying, if you panic or you have the fear, or if you don't have the panic or the fear, the symptoms just disappear. That's not how it works, because there's this cycle that's happening in your brain. Think about it like a snowball effect, right? It typically starts with any kind of stimulation. Fight or flight mode is activated, and then it causes an increase of symptoms. And then you go in this repetitive cycle over and over again until your symptoms, just get worse and worse and worse. Okay. So how do we kind of stop that flare up from happening? Right. Well, the real trick is identifying when your body is trying to go into this fight or flight mode, because you'll start to pick it up. The more you're aware of what's going on, you'll start to have those thoughts. And it usually starts with these thoughts and the stories we tell ourselves, because you'll notice the symptoms. But once you start picking up on this, you'll realize I can actually observe the symptom. Usually it's after I observe it and I notice it, that's when I guess the downward spiral can kind of start. So it's actually here where you have the power, where the brain retraining really happens. This is the crucial moment here, right? Because you can choose which path your brain goes down. Either it's going to go to fight or flight and survival mode, or let's just actually call this thrival mode. And that's just like, this is just like living normal life, normal functioning. Okay. That's like a normal person. Just think about the person you see walking down the street, the person driving, the person doing groceries or exercising or going for a run. Their body is functioning completely normally, right? And that's where we want to get to. So we need to recognize, when is that stimulation happening and when is that feeling in our body starting to build up, right? I always knew that my body was heading down this route when I started hearing those voices in my head that were saying, am I doing too much? Am I going to crash? What if my body can't handle it? And a lot of times you can feel like you're losing control. And for me, looking back now, that was one of the scariest parts, right? Because yeah, it was uncomfortable physically, but it was the sensation or the feeling of losing control, like not being in control. So the more you can recognize what's happening here and you remind yourself of what's going on, that hey, this is just a hypersensitive nervous system. It's actually not going to kill me, right? And granted, this all applies as long as you've had your tests and scans done and the doctors can't find anything that explains your symptoms, right? If they've ruled out any other health issues or things causing this, then you're probably dealing with a hypersensitive nervous system. And there's a few signs that it's a hypersensitive nervous system, right? I'm going to go off a sidetrack here for a little bit. How it's a hypersensitive, do a lot of visuals today. Nervous system. How it's a hypersensitive nervous system. Okay, 1, nothing is showing up on the tests. Okay, nothing is showing up on the tests or scans that clearly explains what you're going through. Okay, that's the most obvious one. And usually that one's kind of frustrating because that takes a while. Like that can be months, if not a couple years, and you could still be in this process of trying to pinpoint really what's going on. Number 2, if the symptoms fluctuate in intensity, right, with no explanations. If your symptoms earlier in the week, they're decent, and then later in the week, they get worse, and it seems like you didn't really do that much, and it's just up and down like this roller coaster, probably hypersensitive nervous system. Because if you did have something else, some other health condition, usually it's pretty consistent, right? Usually it shows up on tests and it's pretty consistent. You don't just have good days and bad days. It doesn't work like that, right? So if the symptoms are fluctuating in intensity with no explanations, high chance it's a hypersensitive nervous system. And I think the biggest one, this is kind of the telltale giveaway, is if the symptoms, the, the the types of symptoms fluctuate. And we call this symptom rotation. Symptom rotation is basically your brain trying to put different limiters in place on your nervous system, stop you from doing things. Because here's how it works, right? You can have a bunch of different symptoms. Let's make this red. You can have like a bunch of different symptoms going on: brain fog, heart palpitations, restless leg syndrome. But the moment you start getting comfortable with them and you start responding well to those symptoms, for example, the brain fog, you realize, oh no, I don't have Alzheimer's. I don't have, my brain isn't deteriorating, right? It's actually okay. I just have brain fog. Once you calm that down, or the fear around that, okay, you cross that out. It's fine. You deal with that. Maybe the heart palpitations, you get your scans done, you do the Holter monitor, you do the echocardiogram, and you're having all these palpitations. Your heart rate feels like it's out of control. But now you got those tests done. Okay, it's not that. Your brain realizes that you dealt with these things, right? So it's going to start to pop up these other symptoms because it's going to do anything it can to try to keep you in survival mode. So it's going to pop up, shortness of breath and maybe visual snow and floaters. Maybe it's going to give you tinnitus. Maybe it's going to give you insomnia. Anything it can for the sole purpose of keeping you in fight or flight mode, because essentially your stimulation threshold has been reached. That's why this alarm system is going off in your body. That's why the limiters are there. Okay. But here, let me erase this. I feel like I'm getting off track here. Let me go back down here. So the crucial brain retraining, it actually happens in this moment when you become aware of what's going on, because you can redirect a lot of this stuff to like normal functioning, or at least try to get your mindset and the way your nervous system naturally responds over to this place of thrival mode and away from fight or flight mode. And over time, you start to cut out this stuff over here. And eventually your body just no longer goes into fight or flight mode or survival mode. It just naturally goes to normal functioning mode. So a way to look at it is symptoms are just limiters on your body. Limiters on your body because your nervous system, your brain doesn't trust that you're going to keep it safe, right? And I'm going to show you why in a second. But in terms of flare-ups, is this starting to make sense how there's a feedback loop here? And once you become aware of the things that you have to stay calm and you have to respond well, so that way you don't go down this path of fight or flight or survival mode. And what does this look like in real time over here? That looks like you reminding yourself, hey, it's just a hypersensitive nervous system. It's bringing logic back into the equation, because going down this route is very emotional, right? Fight or flight and survival, it's like you trying to survive. It's because a lot of times we can feel like our body's trying to kill us, right? So we're trying to run away from these symptoms and these sensations in our body, but it's coming from the inside out. So there's nowhere to run. So it creates this panic inside. But the more logic you have around this stuff, the more you could start to observe what's happening. And all you're doing is observing the symptoms as feedback. You're just observing it not as something good, not as something bad, not as your body's fighting you or it's out to get you. It's really just seeing it as feedback from your nervous system. It's just a limiter on your body. That's it. Your brain is trying to keep you safe. It has your best interests at heart. It's not out to get you. So once you can start to look at it almost like a scientist and put as much emotion aside as you can, and you do that by understanding what's going on, by bringing logic into the picture, it really helps you start to get a grip on the whole situation. And instead of going on this downward spiral, which is, the downward spiral is this, you start to go on the upward spiral, and then you start to work your way back to thriving health. But let's answer some questions about flare-ups. You guys got questions about it? Anything specific? Because next I'm going to be going into progress cycles, which is a little more of a deep dive into handling flare-ups. But is this making sense so far? Let's put in the chat or comment. Focusing on life and the fact that we have better things to do instead of paying attention to the noise from the brain makes all the difference. Yes, very true. Acknowledging and then accepting symptoms really helps me balance myself. Yeah, you do want to accept them, because the more you try to run away from them and avoid them, your brain knows what you're doing, because you're basically seeing them as a threat. The more you try to run away and avoid the symptoms, or not face them. I'm not saying go out and flare up like crazy, right? But when they do come, the more you try to not face them, the scarier they are. It's kind of like, if you turn the light off, right? And then you sprint up the stairs, right? Or back when you could sprint because you feel like someone's chasing you, the faster you run, the more panic you have, versus if you just accept, okay, the light's off, I'm going to calmly make my way upstairs, it's going to go much better. You don't have this big adrenaline dump and stimulation. Okay, here's a great question, and it's a really good segue into this. And, my flare-ups are mainly down to mental stress. Yeah, we're going to cover that, actually. Mental stress. There's 3 different buckets of stimulation. You guys, there's physical, cognitive, and emotional. At least that's how we structure it at CFS Recovery. That seems to really work. So here's a great question that segues into our next topic. Do you push through these flare-ups when symptoms occur? Great question, Dan. So I'm going to answer that. Do you push through these symptoms? Okay, let's clean this up. So let's talk about progress cycles, okay? Progress cycles. What the? Hold on. Where'd my tools go? Give me a second, guys. Okay, progress cycles. Where did my toolbar go? View layers. View, hold on. There it is. Okay. Sorry, couldn't find my colors. So let's do progress cycles over here. Here's how a progress cycle looks. Okay. Let me zoom right in. So progress cycles, it looks like this. Typically, you're going to expand activity. You're going to do more than you're used to doing, right? So in terms of activity level, it looks like this. It's really low. You start to pick it up a little bit, and then you'll kind of top out, because when you increase activity, what typically happens? Let me draw this nicer. What typically happens when you increase the activity, right? You kind of hit a wall. You start to flare up because of the stimulation, right? So you start to feel some symptoms up here. You don't want to push through it, right? That's how you end up crashing, right? So you want to pay attention to, okay, is my body flaring up? How much discomfort do I feel? And you don't want to track this every single day to a T. You'll feel it. You'll know when you're in a little bit of a flare up. When you are in a flare up, basically you dial it back a little bit, right? So activity is reduced. Okay, there's kind of 3 phases here. One is increase activity. Let me write this down. One is increase activity. Step 1 of the progress cycle. Step 2 is basically decrease activity, pull back gently. I'm going to say gently because what you don't want to do is increase activity, go up here, and then go straight back down, right? What does that look like? That looks like if you're mainly couch bound, you're just chilling out, you're relaxing or trying to relax. Then you say, I want to go for a short walk outside. You go from here, sitting on the couch, to walking outside. And then once you flare up, you go straight back to the couch. You don't want that. That's like trying to shift gears in a car. If you guys remember, back in the day, we had standard cars. That's like trying to shift from gear 1 to gear 4, back to gear 1. Very difficult on the engine. And if you think about our bodies right now, think about the engine like our nervous system. It has a very difficult time shifting gears like that. Now, the average person, they can do that no problem because their nervous system has the ability to shift between different gears, but we don't have that. We're a little bit too hypersensitive, so we have to do it gradually, right? So as much as we want to increase activity, we don't want to drop straight back down, right? And we call that black and white behaviors, which we can dive into in another video. But essentially, once you have this flare up, okay, or let's just say adjustment period. Let me change colors. Once you have this adjustment period, you just decrease activity, pull back gently, right? And also you have to respond well. Overall, we want to, the main goal here is to reduce overall stimulation on your body, on your nervous system, right? And that means physically, you want to dial it back a little bit. Same thing with cognitively. You want to use your phones a little bit less. You want to do a little bit less social activity. Just overall, again, the goal here is to decrease overall stimulation, right? Because if we keep increasing stimulation or maintain it, your body won't have time to adjust to that new level. It's kind of like working out, right? You go to the gym if you want to get stronger, you do some push-ups, you feel sore the next day, you don't go back the next day and do push-ups. Like me, I'm really sore right now. My chest is sore, shoulders, back is sore, my legs are really sore. So I'm taking the next 2 or 3 days off of the gym. I'll do some light exercise. I'll go for a walk or something like that. I'll stay active, but I won't go back and go crush a workout. I'll pull back because what happens if you continue working out and you're sore, right? What happens if you do an exercise one day and do a really intense workout to build muscle, you're really sore the next day and you try to do that exact same workout again? And let's say you try to do it 3 days in a row. You guys put in the chat, what happens if you try to do that? Add it to the chat. If you did the same intense workout 3 or 4 days in a row, how would you feel on that 4th day? I'll give you guys time to comment. Yep, you'll definitely feel weaker. Absolutely, you are correct. Wiped out all over again. Yep, absolutely. Anybody else? We only had 2 people comment. Come on, guys. So the question was, if you did a really intense workout and you're sore the next day, what happens if you do that same workout for the next 4 days, the exact same workout, and you try to do it over and over and over again, what happens? The more you guys comment, the more you guys engage with this, the more you're going to understand this. So comment, let me know what you think. I want to make sure you guys are understanding this. Yep. You'll feel a lot of fatigue. Definitely. Yeah, there we go. That's what I was looking for. Injured. You would get injured. No energy for basic stuff. Capacity doesn't grow, but here's the thing, injured. Yes. So in the gym, you get injured. You'd be able to do less and less of a workout. You would have diminishing returns, right? Because now you are kind of frying your nervous system. You're frying your muscles. You are redlining the engine. Now, if it was a normal body, yeah, maybe you could handle it for a little bit. But think of a car that's kind of falling apart. If you redline the engine, you really risk something going loose, something breaking down, right? And so let me put this back on the screen here. So if we keep pushing and we don't pull back, that's when you go even deeper into an adjustment period. Or let's say you keep pushing through this thing, that's what can end up in the thing we really don't want, which is a crash. Okay. Now, a lot of times we think we're in a crash, but look, if you can talk, if you can stand up a little bit, if you can roll over in bed and you can move, you can eat on your own, you can brush your teeth, you're not in a crash. A crash is basically, dial 911, can't move. If I try to lift a finger, my whole body like flares up, right? It's getting difficult to breathe. That's what a crash is. So when people say they're in a crash, actually, most of them I talk to, they're not in a crash because one, you wouldn't be able to type on the phone, you wouldn't be able to look at a screen. So most of the time you're in an adjustment period. So it's actually okay. But there are different levels of adjustment periods, right? The question is, when does it cross over from an adjustment period to a crash? And again, that really depends on how well you can respond to symptoms, but I'm going to dive deeper into that shortly here. But this is why we want to pull back. Does that make sense? You don't want to, quote unquote, injure the nervous system. A crash is kind of like injuring it. But the good thing is with injuries, it's not permanent, right? Even if you do mess up a little bit, you can totally bounce back from it. But let's say you dial it back a little bit. You pull back here. Here's what happens next. Let me get the right color here. Yeah, this is what happens if you pull back. Then your body starts to naturally adjust. It goes, okay, well, now we have space in the nervous system to adjust. It's kind of like your muscles. You give them time to actually grow stronger. With this, you're giving your nervous system time to adapt to the stimulation that you just placed on it. And here's what happens. That is a really squiggly line. Here's what happens. You actually make some progress, right? Your body grants you a new level of capacity, whether that's cognitive, physical, or even emotional capacity. Well, congrats. Once you reach this spot up here, you have just leveled up. Okay. So there's 3 phases to this. Let me actually write this down here. Okay. This entire thing here, this is what we call a progress cycle. Okay. This is like a progress cycle. And the interesting thing is in recovery, you will go through dozens and dozens of progress cycles. Sometimes they're bigger, sometimes they're smaller. So we take this, okay. Let's say you had a small adjustment period. It works exactly the same way, right? Maybe you had a small adjustment period, exact same format. You increased activity in some way. It doesn't have to always be physical. Maybe you went on your phone a little bit more, had a little bit of a flare up or adjustment period. You dialed it back, and then your body granted you some some new level of capacity if you responded well, if you gave your nervous system the space to bounce back. Maybe the next time you do a little bit more, you can have a bigger progress cycle, right? Bigger progress cycle means bigger adjustment period. Okay. You can have dozens and dozens of these in recovery. Actually, you will have dozens and dozens. It actually, let me make this bigger. It can actually look kind of like this. Let me make the quality better. It can actually look kind of like this. You can have big ones. You can have really small ones. You can have really big ones. And then like medium ones. But see how this works here? Basically, as you go through these progress cycles, you are moving up the ladder of recovery. You are moving up the staircase of recovery. You're actually getting better and better. And up here, this is where thriving health is. That's where we want to get to. That is thriving health. Okay, up here. So another thing to keep in mind here is these progress cycles. There's different intensities. Like I said, here you have some really big ones. You have some really short ones. They also last for different lengths of time. Okay, so for example, this small one over here, this flare up, this whole cycle of increasing, then decreasing, then new level unlocked, that can be like, I don't know, let's just say this is a small one. This is like a 3-day or a 2-day one. This one can be 3 days. This one over here might be like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, maybe even 2 months, right? So there's different lengths of them. Some of them are really long, some of them are really short. Maybe you have a monster one like this, right? So look at the lengths over here. But the bottom line is it does not matter, because no matter if it's a big progress cycle or a small progress cycle, big adjustment period, short, long, it doesn't matter, because the go-to is always to respond well to the symptoms and also to just decrease and pull back, But is this making sense? How there are progress cycles that you go through in recovery, right? You increase, then you decrease and dial it back a little bit, then you increase again. Is that making sense for you guys? I think the next part, number 3, in terms of building capacity, how do you actually work through this? How do you know what is the right amount to do here in this part? That's the tricky part, right? And that's what I'm going to show you next. So that way you don't overdo it and you end up going way past your limits. Then you end up like up here, biting off a little more than you can chew. So yeah, I hope this makes sense. And eventually you just keep going and you're going to get to thriving health. Oops. And that is where you are really happy and you have your life back. That's a horrible drawing of a face. But anyways, does that make sense, right? Progress cycles. Okay. Well, we're going to get into the next topic here. And this one, it's going to be a little neater. It's going to be less scribbling because I actually prepared something for you guys here. Okay. So let's talk about the fundamentals of building capacity. Okay. Now, why is this important to cover? Because we talk about expanding activity, but what does that really mean? What does that look like? And the problem a lot of people run into is overdoing it, right? There can also be a lot of delayed effects. So you can do things, but you won't necessarily feel the flare up until a few days after. And maybe a few days after, it's already too late, right? And you're in this really big flare up that you couldn't handle, right? And so there's 3 buckets that we kind of figured out at CFS Recovery, 3 different buckets that we like to categorize activity into, right? Because most people only look at the physical bucket. the physical capacity. So in terms of physical stimulation, think about it this way, right? We have a bucket here. Let me see. How does this? Oh, yeah, here. You have a physical stimulation bucket. Now, your body will give you like a maximum amount until you kind of cap out, right? So maybe, for example, when I was at my worst, I could walk to the washroom. Actually, I couldn't even walk to the washroom. For most of the time, I was bedridden, living at my grandparents' house, getting my meals delivered to me, having to wear an eye mask and earplugs. I could go to the washroom usually twice a day, like holding onto the walls, and that was it. Even sitting up, I think my max was like maybe 30 minutes a day sometimes, and even that was very difficult. That was when I was trying to eat. Okay, so at that time, me going to the washroom twice a day when I was bedridden, that would nearly max out my stimulation threshold, right? This is the bucket that my body allowed for me. And sometimes it's difficult because you don't know exactly what this is, but that's what we help people figure out. But you want to pay attention to how much you're doing physically, right? Are you doing a lot physically? Are you sitting up a lot? Are you walking around a lot? Are you going out? Are you on your feet throughout the day, doing chores around the house without realizing? Or is it quite low, right? Now, if it's quite low, there might be another reason why this can't grow and why you're stuck at this level, right? And that's because there's another bucket. Okay, so let's talk about cognitive stimulation. That is the other bucket over here. We also have emotional stimulation, which looks like this. Okay, so in terms of cognitive stimulation, it might look like this, right? It fills up quite a lot over here. You might have a very high amount of cognitive stimulation in comparison to the physical stimulation you're experiencing. Okay, now this, typically we see that it's phone time or screen time because obviously you're bored. There's not a lot to do. You can't go out and, do regular things or hang out with friends or go exercise. So a lot of us try to find an escape, right? Something to distract our brains from the symptoms. So this is usually quite high for people. And we've seen that the less functional someone is physically, the higher this cognitive is. It's a pattern we've seen because let's say if you're couch bound, maybe your stimulation is over here. The balance of physical to cognitive is physical is over here. Well, if you're on the couch all day, I mean, what are you doing? You're not always staring at the ceiling or at the wall. You're probably on your phone. If you're bedridden, even more, right? If you're bedridden, the physical stimulation is like way down here. Cognitive stimulation is almost through the roof, right? Now, over time, as you get better, let's say you start making it to the point where you can walk outside, you can do groceries, you can drive a car. A lot of times cognitive stimulation drops in comparison to the physical. But here's the one that most people don't talk about. It's the emotional stimulation. Okay. Emotional stimulation, what does that mean? Typically, I'm just going to write some notes here. Typically, that is a lot of fear around symptoms, fear around illness, fear of getting worse, Googling symptoms. That's a big one. Don't do that. If there's one thing to take away that you remember, only one thing from today, if you're Googling symptoms, just stop. Just stop. It's not going to help. Googling symptoms, panicking during flare-ups, doubting recovery, right? Wondering if you're ever going to get better. There's even a loss of identity because maybe you used to be an athlete, maybe you were a high performer at work, and now you have all this brain fog and you're not the person you once were. So that can lead to loss of identity, which obviously is very stressful. I definitely dealt with a lot of that. You can have, maybe there's, losing job or losing friends, right? Those things can be stimulating. But most of all, it's a lot of this stuff: fear around symptoms, fear around the illness, fear of getting worse, fear of crashing, fear of never recovering, and staying like this forever. Okay, so emotional stimulation, before people start learning this stuff and being able to respond well to symptoms, typically this emotional stimulation is really high. It's nearly maxed out, right? Because you're trying to figure out how to get better. You don't know what's going on. The doctors aren't helping you. So obviously, you're going to feel like you have some hidden mysterious illness that the world doesn't have a solution for, that you're never going to get better from because there's no cure to it. And that's what Google is going to tell you. That's why I say don't Google symptoms, or CFS for that matter. But here's the thing: when your emotional stimulation is extremely high, your cognitive stimulation and your physical are naturally going to be low because you don't have space in your bucket to do these things. And this next part here, this is where it's all going to make sense. Okay. Because all of these things pool into the overall bucket of stimulation, which looks like this. Okay. So overall stimulation capacity. The less overall stimulation you have, the less symptoms you will have, right? You never want to get to zero though, right? You don't want to not do anything and lie down and just stare at the ceiling all day. That's not going to help you get better, right? You could do that temporarily to rest a little bit. Obviously, when you take naps, that's okay. But that's not a long-term strategy. That's kind of like pumping the brakes if the car's going too fast. You don't want to slam on the brakes, right? The more this is filled up, the more symptoms you have. So here's where people typically find us. They come to us in this state: very high emotional stimulation, panicking, don't know what's going on. They're just terrified. And this is where I was before I learned all of these things. And so if we were to pool this together, look at this. Bang, whoops, boom, boom. The emotional stimulation fills up so much of your overall capacity that you don't have space for these other things, right? This is why we say respond well to symptoms. This is why the emotions drive a lot of the CFS, because you just don't have space for these other things. Now, here's what happens. Watch. When you can start responding well to symptoms, and let's say this drops, well, now you have capacity for these other things, right? You can actually walk around more. You have more energy throughout the day. You can think a little bit clearer. You have less brain fog. Look what happens when you start responding well and your emotional stimulation drops. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Look at this compared to the previous picture we had, right? You actually have more room in your capacity to do physical things, to cook, to shower, to brush your teeth, to sit up, to maybe watch movies, to go on your phone and text friends, because now you actually have space, because you have created the space. This is where you have control, right? A lot of people, let's say if their emotions are really high, they'll just try to force their way with these two areas, with the physical and cognitive. They'll try to force this up with just willpower. They'll be like, you know what? Screw it. I'm not going to let this illness ruin my life. I'm going to go for a walk. I don't care. I'm going to increase my walking and I'm just going to respond well, right? But if you do this without dropping this and say, oh no, I'll respond well after. I'll deal with that later. I'm just going to power through it. Well, guess what? Look what just happened. We stacked it up a little too high. And this goes way over. Now we're in the territory of going over your limit here. And we are now in, I don't want to say crash territory, but big adjustment period. You are in for a big adjustment period. And the thing is, you'll feel it. It's not like you do one thing and all of a sudden you're way maxed over this thing, right? You'll feel it over time. So let's say overall, this is the stimulation level. Let me just copy this. Overall, let's say this is your stimulation level. Let's make it orange. Let's make it nice orange color. Okay. Where the sweet spot is, kind of in the middle, right? That's where it's manageable. That's kind of like if you're driving a car, you're not quite going super slow, holding up traffic, annoying everybody else, right? You're not overdoing it and speeding, breaking all the rules, driving recklessly. You're kind of going the speed limit. And the speed limit, there's this range, right? It can be from here. You never want to be redlining, right? You never want to get all the way up here. You want to leave some room in the tank. But again, you also don't want to be all the way down here, right? So the sweet spot, you control this by controlling these variables over here. Okay, so you could play around with this. Okay, is this making sense so far? There's a few different buckets that kind of pool in to this overall stimulation bucket, right? This adds to this. It's kind of like playing Jenga with your different stimulation levels. I call it Jenga with the nervous system. You're trying to, but instead of taking things out, you're trying to build them up, right? But this is probably the simplest way you can look at it. Now, when I was recovering, I didn't even focus on the physical, cognitive, and emotional because I got pretty good at being aware of where I was at in my stimulation levels. Now, it's very rare that you're going to feel no symptoms. Even when you're down here, right? You'll probably still feel some symptoms because the nervous system is still trying to figure out all of this stuff. So you can start to get a sense of, okay, where you're at, right? Up here, and we actually have a chart for this. This is what we teach people. The goal is to teach people this, and especially people we work with directly, so that way you don't need us to hold your hand, for the rest of your life. It's internalizing the stuff so you can read your body. And you usually read this by the amount of symptoms you feel, right? You'll know you're up here because you'll feel a little bit crappier, a little bit more yucky, right? Here, you'll feel some symptoms, but you're functional, like you could do stuff, or the symptom level is manageable. And I'll show you guys a guide for this stuff, right? But overall, some people prefer different things. Some people really love physical activity, like walking outside, just doing physical things, gardening, right? And they don't really care about going on their phone or socializing as much. So this could be really low. And that balance is totally fine, right? Or it could be really low physical stimulation. For me, I would bounce back and forth, right? So when I was just getting out of the hospital, my physical was really low, but my cognitive was building up pretty quickly. I was on my computer quite a bit because I was learning how to video edit and do photography and graphic design. And for me, that was really fulfilling. Like I really, really enjoyed that. And so this was growing over time. And when I was in adjustment periods, like the screen time, funny, the cognitive stimulation for me would actually give me physical symptoms, like burning sensations in my legs, aches and pains in my body, headaches, things like that. When I was in an adjustment period from these things, cognitive, I would actually switch it. So I'd pull back my cognitive. I do a little bit more physical stimulation. So less screen time and a little bit more just getting outside, being in nature, sitting in the sun, breathing in fresh air. And it's interesting because the physical stimulation, that would actually cause cognitive symptoms. It was really interesting how it worked. So when I increased my physical, instead of getting the body aches and pains and things like that, like I still got them, but I would get a lot of brain fog, a lot of memory issues, a lot of tinnitus, things like that. I would get shortness of breath as well, but it was really interesting how physical stimulation caused cognitive symptoms and cognitive stimulation caused physical symptoms. There was obviously a crossover, but really interesting how that worked. Now, again, the biggest thing we want to focus on here is this emotional stimulation, because that's what you have control over. This is where it all starts. This is how you free up capacity in your body. The more you can drop this down, the more you create space for these other activities for your nervous system and stimulation levels. And probably the easiest way to drop this down is by bringing in logic. It's like a battle in your brain between logic and emotion. Let me actually put that up here. Oops. Okay. It's like this battle. It's this tug of war. The more emotions you have, the less logical you will be. And think about it. Think about it for a second. Think about the most intense adjustment periods or flare-ups that you've had, right? You probably had some irrational thoughts. I remember I was in a severe flare-up, like really intense. And then I looked down at my arm and I found a mole. There was a small mole on my arm and I started freaking out. I was like, that mole wasn't there. That was never there. What if I have skin cancer? I start Googling moles, right? Again, do not Google symptoms. I started Googling, what is this mole doing that I didn't think it was there before? Is it bad? Should I be worried? And it's like, yeah, you might have skin cancer. I was like, oh God. And it was just so illogical because that mole was there the whole time. But when you're in an adjustment period, it's like your brain has this magnifying glass focusing on all these potential problems because it's trying to keep you safe. So it's looking for any potential threats. And that's the key word here, potential. It's actually seeking problems. And if there's no problems, it'll probably create some problems, right, that don't exist or potential problems. So if you have high emotional stimulation, there's going to be less logic. Now you can push back on that by bringing in logic into the equation, right? The more logic you have, the less emotional you can be. Like there's only so much your brain can process. It's either, more emotional or more logical, but it's like kind of like a battle, right? With the logic, the way you bring that into the equation is watching videos like this, just understanding what's going on. I think the biggest thing is understanding the progress cycles, that they're temporary, and also understanding that your symptoms are not there to try to kill you. They're not there to punish you. They're there to keep you safe. And once you get on the same page with your brain and your nervous system and realize it's actually looking out for you and it's working for you, not against you, it reduces a lot of the emotions because it just makes logical sense. Oh, there's a glitch in my brain. That's it. And all we're doing here is trying to rewire that software glitch in your brain. Does that make sense, guys? Comment probably the biggest takeaway, the biggest thing that's stuck here, just so I know. I'm probably going to turn this into a YouTube video as well, so you guys can watch it over and over. Actually, it will be. The replay will be up, but I'll do a video dedicated specifically to this. Yeah, Laura says interesting visuals. Shannon says it makes a lot of sense. Yep. Real eye opener. Love the bucket idea. Nice. Makes sense. Need to learn how to rest cognitively. Nice. What else? Yeah, responding well to symptoms is the key. I'll show you guys something as well. So the goal over time is to build up this capacity, because here's what happens. Let's go even deeper, right? Here, let me actually answer a few questions first. If you push yourself too much physically, do you still get flare-ups? Oh, like right now, as in me personally, if I push myself, no. In fact, I pushed myself really hard the past few days, as in I worked a lot because we're building a lot of cool stuff on the back end at CFS Recovery. I worked, I don't know, maybe 12-hour days, handful of days in a row. And then I also worked out really intensely 3 days in a row. Little sleep. I was eating good though, so that helped. But yeah, no symptoms. I don't get symptoms anymore. Zero symptoms. Cool. Okay, so let's go back here. Let's jump right back into it. I let the brain breathe for a little bit, right? So over time, as you increase capacity, or sorry, increase stimulation, and then you dial it back, think about it like a rubber band. You guys ever play with those rubber bands as a kid, right? You stretch them out, then you bring them back, and then next time you stretch it, it stretches further. It's the elasticity. So let's say you have a brand new rubber band and it's like this short. You could stretch it to here, then you go back. Then it goes further and back, even further and back. You guys ever play with rubber bands like that growing up? If you did, this is going to make some sense. If not, just imagine a rubber band, something stretchy, right? You stretch it over time and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Well, now what happens if you take that tiny rubber band, right, and you stretch it all the way to here the first time? Probably going to snap, right? Probably going to snap. So you want to build in that elasticity and that flexibility, right? So going back to this drawing over here, as you increase capacity and then you dial it back, right? Your overall stimulation capacity, the cool thing is your brain adapts. It builds over time. It can change. And it's not like your brain doesn't have the ability to feel normal and exercise and do all these things. It has it in there. It's stored in there. So for example, let me just make this white. So for example, your actual capacity, let's say this is this is thriving. This is, normal life. That's normal life up here. Let me actually do this. Nope. There we go. It's dotted. Okay, so over time, this is the potential that we're trying to work back to. Your brain does have the ability to do that. It just forgot how to access that. It's kind of like capped off over here. That's its limit. But over time, you can raise that limit because as you stretch this rubber band of your nervous system capacity, this starts to increase as well, right? It'll increase, it'll drop. It'll increase, it'll drop. This is why you can't just blast your way through recovery and push through the symptoms. It's why you have to dial it back and respond well. And it goes back to that progress cycle. That's why the crucial step in there is pulling back, because you're giving it time to adjust. And each time you go through a progress cycle, you're basically raising the bar of that capacity. So it's like it goes up, down, up, down, up, down. And it looks like this over time. It grows, goes back, grows, goes back. Sometimes you have really big jumps and it drops down. And then maybe it drops up here or it goes up here, then it drops down. Maybe you overdo it a little bit, right? And then now you drop down here in terms of capacity and functioning. But that's okay, because a lot of people are under the misconception that you could do one small thing or you overdo it one time and you kind of go over this limit. And then now you're back to like zero, back to square one. But that's not the case. Like you will drop, maybe you drop to like here. That's okay, because this bar, even if you drop down here, it's slowly going to go down, right? And then you just build back up from there. You pick up where you left off from. It's kind of like if you're hiking up a mountain and you're climbing. If you lose your footing and slip a little bit, you don't slide all the way down to the bottom of the mountain. Like there are certain checkpoints you've done to get up there. There's certain camps you've set up, certain safety things you put in place that you reinforced. So, I mean, I could talk about this for hours. Like even in different levels of recovery, you don't always have to be expanding. You can go on cruise control a little bit, right? you can actually, let's say your capacity is, it's like up here, right? You could go on cruise control and just chill there, right? You don't have to keep expanding. You can enjoy the view from that level of capacity. I call it, like, I say it's like climbing a mountain. You don't have to rush your way to the top. You don't have to get up here in a record time, right? Where's the, yeah, you don't have to get up here in a record time. You could enjoy the views at every single level, because on the way back to thriving health, you're going to notice things that you missed before. You're going to notice things about life that you kind of ignored because you were so busy living life. You forgot how nice it was to just sit in the sun. And when you get a lot of these abilities stripped away from you when you're sick, like you can't walk, you can't eat things you like to eat, you can't spend time with friends. Well, when you're able to do those things again, they're 1,000 times, they're infinitely more enjoyable and fulfilling, because you're actually able to enjoy the moments, right? You're not rushing your way through life. So, yeah, just like Dolphy said, the recovery journey is very, very exciting. And I look at my life now, actually, my life as a whole. I love my life right now. It's awesome. But one of the most exciting times in my life was on that recovery journey when I was building capacity, right? Because you're going through life seeing things that you completely missed, that you completely walked by and didn't notice or didn't cherish as much as you could have. So now you're getting, it's like experiencing life for the first time again, right? You're experiencing life with a different lens, because in order to get out of this, you do have to change a lot of how you see life and how you do things and the patterns you have, and not always pushing and rushing through life. Now you're able to kind of stop and smell the roses. So back to what I was getting at, you can coast a little bit, right? And as you coast at these levels, as you're not really forcing yourself to expand and grow capacity, the more you coast at these levels, the more you reinforce that level. So you're building in these reinforcements, and that just takes time, right? So there were times when I would increase activity over months and months, and then for about 2 or 3 months, I just do the same stuff. I'm like, I like this. Like, I don't mind not exercising right now. I don't mind going on runs all the time and, being really jacked and fit again. I like this. I like this pace. I'm going to enjoy it for a little bit, because guess what? That's basically reinforcing that level. So the next time you start to increase, let's just say we increase the levels to here. Let's say you do mess up a little bit and you go way past this. Well, because you enforce this level so much, I guess pretty strong, you're not going to fall all the way back down here. You'll maybe drop to about here, right? Because that's the level that you were coasting on for a little bit. Your body's quite comfortable there. So it's just going to drop a little bit, and that's totally fine. I guarantee you that there are going to be dozens of times where your capacity does drop, right? And you feel like you overdid it. That's fine, because guess what? The general direction that we're moving towards is thriving health. And that's how it looks. You're going to go up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. And going back to those progress cycles, remember those progress cycles I talked about? These guys, where is it? Increase activity, pull back, and then you increase again. Oh, that's a horrible circle. Remember these progress cycles? That is basically what you do to build a capacity here. Progress cycle, you drop down a bit. Progress cycle, drop down. Progress cycle, progress cycle, progress cycle. And you can have a really big progress cycle like this. Big jump in capacity and activity, you also drop down a little bit, which is fine. And then you go up. So it's directly correlated to the progress cycle. Your level of capacity unlock is going to match, for example, how much you expand here. It's like that. Then it drops down a little bit. and then it's up. Does that make sense? Boom, 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 until you reach the end here and everybody's happy. It's like the hero coming back from the journey, like Frodo at the end of Lord of the Rings, after he just completed the mission. He's like, got the job done. And now you have some epic stories to tell. You could write a whole book on this and inspire people with what you just went through. And you start to actually appreciate the whole journey, right? Because it's not easy to do this. Like, as much as I can talk about this all day and make it seem simple, it's because I've spent like thousands of hours studying this stuff and implementing it into people's recovery journeys, right? So I've seen every case you could think of. I've seen bedridden, I've seen semi-functional, no matter what stage you're at. Also, no matter how long you've been dealing with this for. I've seen people who've had this for 50 years. Shout out to Marie Grace. Maybe she's watching right now. She's got a recovery interview on my channel. There's actually a lady, Dusty. Shout out to Dusty. It was her 74th birthday. She's a thriver inside the Recovery Academy. Her 74th birthday. A couple years ago, she was so severe that the garbage trucks would give her really bad symptoms. Just the sound of the garbage truck. That was a couple years ago, and she was 72 or 73 at the time. She just turned 74, and she rode 74 miles for her 74th birthday on a bike. She did it with a whole bunch of friends. So these principles, they apply regardless of the amount of symptoms you feel, the severity of symptoms, how long you've been dealing with this for, how old you are. It doesn't matter. Science is science. The nervous system is the nervous system. The brain is the brain, right? And this is how we come in and fix the glitch inside the nervous system, right? Does that make sense for everybody? I'm going to answer a few questions here. Miguel, do you have cases of parents with young kids? Yes, absolutely. Many parents with young kids. So it is another layer of complexity in it, because you're not just dealing with symptoms and maybe like loss of identity and, losing your livelihood maybe. There's also, what we see a lot is the guilt of not being able to show up for your kids at 100%. It can be really heartbreaking for a lot of parents. They can feel like they're not giving their child the attention they deserve, or they want to do things for the children, but they can't because they're limited. And so they start to feel even more guilty and worse, which, as we know, looking at this, that's a lot of emotional stimulation. So that's something we see with parents. Emotional stimulation, when they first start with us, it's typically really high, because they can also start to see their kids as one of the reasons they can't recover, because there's so much on their plate, right? There's a lot to think about. So we actually try to reframe it when it comes to kids. We say, you might feel like you can't recover because of the kids, because you have to do this and that and all the chores and drive them everywhere, extra responsibility. But let's reframe that to that's your reason why you're going to recover. And that's the reason why things are going to be so great with the family. All the amazing trips you're going to go on when you're symptom free, you're going to do it for these kids. So they become the reason and the whole purpose, like the driving factor of recovery, versus that extra weight slowing you down in recovery, right? And also understanding that it's just temporary, right? And it's not that, I don't know if this is the case for you, but for a lot of the parents we see, it's not that you're a bad parent or that you can't do your job properly. It's that you're doing the best with what your body is allowing you to do. And in working on your nervous system and yourself, it's going to allow you to do so many greater things in the future with the kids, and appreciate those times, because nothing will make you appreciate people and life and experiences more than having them taken away from you, or having those experiences taken away from you. So yeah, people with kids, parents, they recover all the time. We actually have called specifically for that kind of stuff. Also for kids with CFS, we have a 10-year-old girl right now, 10-year-old lady, young lady. She had to stop going to school because her symptoms were so bad. She had dozens of symptoms, and now she's going back to school, just 6 months in, because we work with her through the parent, actually, right? A lot of times, if you have a support system, we actually work with the entire support system. So everybody is on the same page and they understand what's going on, what's the path forward, and what they can expect 60 days, 30 days, 90 days from now, So I want to show you guys how this looks in real life application, right? What does this look like when you apply it to recovery? I will share. Whoops, that's the wrong one. This. Okay. So this is an example of a month over month yearly dashboard. If we look at this, you can see the physical, cognitive, and emotional capacity, right? You can see the bars here in month 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way to month 12. So typically within 12 months, we can hit that like fully functional, like you're good to go. If you're coming to all the calls, you're following the plan. I mean, you may still have some symptoms here, but you're living life. You can exercise, do all of those things with the current recovery system we have now, right? We can actually track over time. We do this with a nervous system health assessment where you're improving, right? So for example, this individual, month 3, huge jump in cognitive capacity, right? But physical didn't improve too much, which is totally fine. Now, if we didn't have this data, that person might be wondering, oh, I'm not getting better because I'm not walking further. I'm still really tired throughout the day. But based on the actions, we actually saw, oh, no, you're actually getting better. Look at this bucket. We increased. So the next month, this increased, and then both are increasing. And then guess what? Big adjustment period, right? It's never a straight line up. It never goes perfectly. But capacity dropped here, which is totally fine, right? And we just had to follow the plan. This was actually supposed to happen. Your capacity does drop, right? And so this looked like it was a 2-month adjustment period, roughly. Month 6 and month 7, they dropped. But then if they respond well, we're increasing capacity. And with the emotional, it's kind of reversed because this means that they're responding really well to the symptoms and their mindset is really good. If it was low here, it was all the way down here, that means they're not responding well and their capacity is full. So this is basically like how well they're performing in this area, right? And over time, they just get all the way up here. Now, the question is, how do you know what to do in order to improve these things? And so I want to show you guys this really cool thing. It is in our, this is one of the things we do, right? Whoops. Yeah, this is one of the things we do. This is an example of a plan we give somebody. And for this person, let's see. Okay, this is somebody who was in the couch-bound stage. Everything we do here is data-driven, right? Especially if we're building actual plans for people. You guys could actually get one of these plans inside the Recovery Academy or inside the Platinum program. But it looks like this. So this person was couch-bound, right? They were about here. The goal is to get to thriving health. So there's a few different stages they want to get through. At every different stage, there is a certain strategy for that particular stage. There's also certain roadblocks that people have. Like that's what these dotted lines are. Those dotted lines are kind of like recovery ceilings, which is why some people can get stuck in a stage for so long, right? And they'll kind of break out of it. For example, where we see this is when people are housebound, it can be very tricky to shift over into that semi-functional stage because they maybe keep overdoing it, right? Maybe they keep biting off a little more than they can chew, then they slide backwards. So they actually do make progress. Let me draw here. Start here. They actually do make progress, but then they hit this wall and then they slide back down here. And they're in this endless cycle of housebound, being kind of semi-functional, but they go backwards and then repeat and it's basically running in circles. Whoops. No, I don't want that. But you guys get the point. You're going up, down, very roller coaster like. So yeah, there's different stages in recovery here, but where was I getting at? Yeah, so this person was couch bound. They were couch bound. They were there. Obviously, the goal is to get to thriving health up here. So the plan for somebody who is couch bound, this is specifically what we gave them, right? And this is completely customized to the individual. Like, we don't just give you some kind of cookie cutter thing, but we do it in different buckets so that way you know what to focus on. For example, in the physical plan items. Oops, let me do this. Physical plan items, you know specifically what to do. And it's not an overload of things. Like, you don't have to do 20 different things. It's just a few things. And it's not set in stone. These are suggestions based on your situation of things you like to do. So this person, walk 2 to 3 minutes with 1 minute break in the middle, 2 times daily. It's very specific, right? And if they follow the plan, they're not going to crash and overdo it just because we know what to do. We've seen it so many times. We work with several hundred people, right? Do 1 to 2 small chores a day that you enjoy, right? Take them slowly to signal safety to your nervous system. Okay, so that's physical plan, right? That's all you have to do physically. You can do other things, but these are the most important levers to pull in recovery. Cognitive is also that, right? So cognitive plan items. Actually, yeah, let me make this wider. Paint or do a craft for 15 to 20 minutes daily. Doing a valued task will send signals of safety to your nervous system while expanding activity. So we also try to give a reason of why we're doing the thing so that way you understand. Because again, it goes back to that saying, teach someone or give somebody a fish, you feed them for a day, teach them to fish, you feed them for life. The goal is to get you to understand why we're even doing these things. So ultimately, down the road, you can come up with your own plans intuitively, and you know what to do and why you're doing them and how they help recovery. Expose yourself to sunlight. Look at your surroundings in the morning to prime your nervous system to the outside world. Okay. So there's that. If we go to emotional plan items for this particular individual, keep a running list of your wins and progress so that way you can see recovery is possible, because that was their kind of roadblock. Nightly gratitude list of 3 to 5 items. This helps rewire your nervous system and brain to respond well to symptoms. And then there's like a positive change item as well. Talk to yourself like you would a good friend. I think a lot of us can do a better job at that in recovery. You can be very hard on yourself a lot of the times. And then just additional comments, if there's anything in particular, nudge forward where manageable, pull back to manageable if nearing overwhelm and unmanageability, right? So this is a basic plan we would give somebody that covers those different buckets of stimulation. That way they know exactly what to do. And it's very flexible, right? It's not set in stone. These can be updated. For example, people inside Recovery Academy Platinum, we can update this every few days. We can update it every couple weeks. You can chat with your coach. You can ask questions about it 5 days a week. So if you are in an adjustment period, what does this look like then, right? What do we do if you're flaring up and you can't go for a walk? Let me actually get rid of all these markings. What do you do if you are in a flare up and you could barely do any of these things? Well, that's totally fine. That's actually expected, right? So then we come up with a plan to do outside of when you're feeling normal. When you are in an adjustment period, we just dial this back a little bit, or we do completely different things, right? But there's also a checklist here so people can kind of check it off as they go, just to see their progress. You don't have to be perfect with it. Actually, we recommend people don't do it perfectly. Leave a few spots blank, because if you try to be perfect, you're just going to put more stress on yourself. And with all these tools in place to wrap this all up, recovery can become very predictable. Very predictable. It doesn't have to be a guessing game. It doesn't have to be like crossing your fingers or spinning a wheel hoping it lands on, oh, I'm recovered, right? It doesn't come down to luck. It doesn't come down to waiting for this thing to go away. You can't outwait this illness. You have to manually go in there and fix the glitches that are happening in the brain. And if you can follow most of this plan, we've actually figured out how to see a trajectory for recovery. For example, and this is just something cool I'll show you guys. This person who was bedridden, or not bedridden, this person who was couch bound, they were at a low functioning level. But based on our data, we've had over 1,500 people who have used this recovery system. We can give an approximate range of when we can expect this individual to recover based on 1,500 people we've seen. So we're not just pulling numbers out of a hat here. We're not just saying, oh, maybe we can get here if we maybe try this and this and this. But we can see it'll take them approximately 7 to 11 months if they follow most of their plan. They don't even have to do it perfectly, but it gives them a range of what they can expect. And so for you guys, it might really help knowing roughly how long it's going to take. So you're not wondering if you can even recover. Now there's a timeline to it. And this is as long as you've had your tests and scans done and the doctors haven't seen anything that explains your symptoms. If they can't fix it, they don't know what's going on, chances are we're dealing with a hypersensitive nervous system, right? And we can set approximate timelines. It's usually within these timelines. And this is what we've developed. We've worked on this, literally spent hundreds of hours, many team meetings with all the coaches, with every single person on our team to figure this out, right? And this is coming from our recovery playbook. We have right now, it's probably close to 300 pages of what to do in every different scenario for CFS, right? But it's pretty cool too, because obviously you don't just get there automatically. You don't just get there overnight. It takes time. There's different levels. It is a journey. 7 to 11 months, a lot can happen in there. So there are also milestones. Like this particular individual, for example, they were, again, couch bound. So if we go back here, within the first 30 days, they can expect lowered symptoms. They're not going to go away overnight. They'll still be there, but they'll be lower. There'll be increased energy. And there's going to be growing confidence because you'll actually feel momentum. You'll have a recovery path forward. Month 3, for example, is breaking free from the couch, regaining confidence. So you can actually cook simple meals. You can shower. You can have short conversations. You start to feel hope return, which is pretty cool, right? Let me make this smaller. Month 6, what you can expect. You can walk around your neighborhood, go for a meal with a friend, run small errands on your own without thinking twice. You can move freely, exercise lightly, engage in hobbies again, all without needing days to recover, right? Month 12, you have your life back. You can work, socialize, move without constantly thinking about symptoms. And basically, you're closing the chapter on CFS, right? And you have your life back. So that's something pretty cool that we put together. If you did want to see what this would look like for you, you can apply for Recovery Academy Platinum just to see if this is even going to be a good fit. I mean, we can't guarantee that this is going to work for you if you're not the right fit. But essentially, we have the tools. We feel like we have the formula down because with a plan, with figuring out where you're even at, what the starting point is, even what your specific symptoms are. You may not have all the symptoms, but you have certain ones that really bother you. You have certain ones that really get in the way of recovery. For this person, it was fatigue, dizziness, and POTS. These were their biggest roadblocks, right? So that adds into the emotional capacity or the emotional stimulation. Don't know my baseline or how to expand safely. And this person just needed more support from people who understand, right? So if we have a solid starting point, we have a plan together to put in place, and we have a vehicle, which is the Recovery Academy, which you're coming to group calls, you're meeting with your coach regularly, they're messaging you, updating your plan, then there's no reason we shouldn't hit this timeline over here for recovery. Again, I can't guarantee these numbers, but this is based on over 1,500 people who have used this tool, right? So I just thought that was really cool to share. And it kind of shows you guys how the different buckets of stimulation build into an actual plan. Like, where do you go from here? What action steps do you take? Well, you turn it into a specific plan, right? And that's something we could help you with. But let's answer some questions here. Yes, absolutely. This works for central sensitization and also POTS and dysautonomia and post-viral vax. We do get a handful of vaccine-injured people coming through. Central sensitization, that's actually one of the diagnoses that I got as well, along with all the other things. Like, that's actually in my file. So yeah, sensitization, definitely. Here we go. Love this question. With 1,500 cases, do you find that older people take longer to recover? No. In fact, older people can recover way faster than young people. But it's kind of a mixed result. You know, there's some people in their early 20s recovering faster than people in their 50s. For example, Dusty, 74 years old, recovered pretty quickly overall, but because she really implemented all the recovery principles. Well, not all, but as much as she could, came up to as many calls as she could, was very involved in the community, followed the plan, internalized the stuff, and now she's biking, 74 years old. We also have an 86-year-old who used to be I believe, psychologist. Yeah, Stanford degree, PhD, all of that stuff. And once she learned this approach to recovery, she started getting better very, very quickly. Right? And she's crushing it. And she's 86 years old. And she's actually probably recovering faster than some other people, 1/3 her age. Maybe even 1/4 her age. She's recovering faster. So no, older people don't take longer to recover. All right, I'll just go through as many questions as I can here. Anyone here tried the GAPS diet? See any benefits? I personally haven't tried it. I found that diets did not help me one bit, like 0%. In fact, when I was getting better, I was eating the wildest foods you could imagine: cookies, muffins. When I was eating perfectly, I was actually getting worse because the diet wasn't the root cause. It's actually my nervous system. So that's just my personal experience. Might have worked for other people. Question: in the time except doing those things, I guess if the person is couch bound, how to beat boredom and not go on your phone, basically. Yeah, so you can still go on your phone, but there's different levels of using your phone. So within using the phone, the most stimulating thing you can do is watch like a horror movie or watch the news. Politics, that's the worst thing you could do. So a step below that is watching something funny or enjoyable. Step below that is listening to something funny and enjoyable. A step below that is just listening to like an audiobook, something light, something easy that is just enough to keep your brain going. I listen to a lot of podcasts. Joe Rogan podcasts were that, oh man, I probably watched or listened to about 2 to 3 episodes a day when I was in bed because I was so freaking bored. So I did that when I didn't know what was going on. Once I started learning this stuff and recovering, I didn't need to kind of pacify the boredom with all those podcasts. What is the reason behind delayed paid back? So yeah, what is the reason for delayed flare-ups? Essentially, it's just the way the body works. You know, it's kind of like when you work out, you're a little bit sore that same day, but it's really 2 days later. I used to be a personal trainer, so we studied this stuff. I remember the charts. Let's say you worked out on this day, and this is the timeline. Next day, you'd be pretty sore. The day after that, you'd be really sore. So it usually peaked around the second or third day. They call that delayed onset muscle soreness, DOMS. It's just the way the body works. There is a delayed response. So you don't even know you don't need to know the reason behind it. I just keep it super simple. If the symptoms come, just respond well. What about people with suspected MCAS? I did see the video you had with Nikki. Were there any others? Yeah, there were so many others. Food intolerances, right? Let me show you something. So we actually have this. It's in one of our application pages. Let me see if I can find it, because there's tons and tons of people dealing with that. Yeah, let me. Well, I'll look for it. While I'm looking for it, I'll well, yeah. Let me look for it right now. Yeah. So MCAS, pretty common. Food intolerances, food sensitivities, things like that. Not a fun time. So, for example, okay, so this is on one of the pages on our website. If we go to food over here, yeah, where is it? Enjoying food again, yep. So, yeah, there's so many people. I mean, this person couldn't swallow water. He was really bad. Went from struggling to swallow water and eating baby food for 6 months to devouring pizza and burgers. All right. This person, she had 2 bites of her first solid food in over a year. Homemade bread. Shout out to Geraldine. I think she's on this call. Last winter, I was cut down to 10 to 15 foods. Now she eats so much. Cheesecake, all these other things. That's pretty good. Okay. Hannah, she also has a recovery interview. So check out Hannah on the channel. Severe sensitivities. Now she can eat whatever. This person, McDonald's. There's also another McDonald's win. Yeah, another McDonald's win. Yeah, Hannah, this person, had food intolerances, could barely get out of bed. Now I can eat whatever I want. First time ate at a restaurant since summer. So yeah, lots and lots of MCAS wins. Also other wins too. Like, for example, wanting to get back to work. These are cases of people who have returned to work and they're doing great. A really exciting one is, for example, fitness, exercise and fitness. These are people who were bedridden or really sick before. Shout out to Amy, for example, first workout sweat in over 5 years, or this 4-kilometer hike, or bedbound back to the gym. The really cool ones, though, I think one of my favorites is the family and friends, right? Because that's really what's important. That's what you realize once you come out of this illness. Baby on board, finally got married, was able to actually enjoy the marriage instead of being stuck in bed all day. Camping with the family, going to the zoo with friends, playing a little soccer with the kids. That's exciting. Going on a flight with the family, first time flying in 7 years for this person. She was really bedridden. Rachel was in a really tough spot. There's Junior. Lots of family stuff. Brings a nice warm smile to my face. Vivienne celebrating the anniversary, because a year prior they were celebrating on the bedroom floor because she couldn't tolerate light or sitting at a table. So they were chilling. But this year they went to a countryside, went to a restaurant, had burgers while she was in an adjustment period. So yeah, a lot of cool wins here. Lots of MCAS, and along with so many other things. I'll go for another maybe 5 minutes here, then I'll let you guys go. Don't want to overstimulate you guys cognitively. Do you think meditation is an important part of recovery? No, I don't think it's important. In fact, I think you can recover without doing any meditation at all. It's definitely not a prerequisite. The whole purpose of meditation is to bring your mind to a calm place. I actually filmed a 30-minute YouTube video about this yesterday, breaking down this exact topic. But yeah, not an important part of recovery. Some people, it actually stresses them out to try and meditate. So not necessary. Shannon. Yeah, shout out to Sean. Sean is absolutely crushing it. Yeah, I remember Sean. One of our first calls, you were in a tough spot. I think you were couch bound, right? And I remember some of your early wins was being able to attend your kids' hockey games, right? And be the father that you wanted to be. So that was really cool to see. You're crushing it, man. All right. I feel like I'm mostly recovered and back to handling everyday things, but my sleep is still really rough. Keep waking up several times during the night. Do you have any advice? Yeah. Honestly, the sleep quality will come and go. I would really try to respond well to that by kind of being okay with it. Your body will just wake up and do what it does. It's no fault of your own. If you wake up with all this adrenaline, I would go try to burn off the adrenaline by doing something if you can. Go stand up, walk to a different room, walk in circles for a little bit, do whatever, go sit down and read a book. Sometimes that's better than just lying there if you do have adrenaline. Now, if you just naturally wake up, all right, we'll try to go back to sleep. But kind of ebb and flow with your body. Listen to it. Don't try to force it to do something it really doesn't want to do. So if it doesn't want to sleep, totally fine. It's just glitching out a little bit. That's all. But that will definitely get better over time. So don't take it too seriously, the sleep. I was fairly ahead in recovery, gym, and jogging until a big trauma occurred and ended up housebound again. How to make sure that in the future the nervous system will be robust enough to not snap. Okay. Well, if you were doing the gym and jogging and a trauma occurred and that trauma is what caused you to go backwards, you were probably pushing the limits quite a bit when it came to the exercise. Because naturally, we should be able to handle big trauma. That shouldn't push you all the way back to being housebound. So you maybe didn't leave enough room in your overall stimulation capacity. So I would just leave more room in that. I would be mindful of how much you're adding to your plate in terms of stimulation to give space for any curveballs that could come up, if that makes sense. But if you already made it that far in recovery one time, you could totally do it again, and you could do it even better this time. So yeah, that's not a problem at all. You're going to do great. So that's what I would do. How important is pacing compared to reacting well to symptoms in your opinion? Reacting well to symptoms is much more important than pacing. I would say, I don't want to put a number to it, but it is exponentially more important. Because if you respond well to symptoms, that alone, remember, like I showed here in this drawing, without getting too deep into it, if you respond well to symptoms, you are creating so much space for other things. You don't really need to pace as much as you were pacing before. You still need to pace a little bit, but at a much higher level, right? Because you just opened up so much room for capacity over here, right? So both are important, but I would say responding well to symptoms is, if I had to put a number to it of importance, like 10 times more important. Wow, that's amazing. I could not eat for over 3 months, barely sipped water, and lost over 50 pounds. Wow. Yeah, it's pretty wild what the body goes through, but also how resilient it is. The fact that you can make a full comeback from this, I didn't think there was a chance to turn this thing around. I was so severe. I was like, beating CFS, that's as impossible as me trying to climb Mount Everest tomorrow. Like, that's how big that task was. There are people who aren't helped with your approach. What's your view on why that is? Well, some people it just won't click, I guess, and the people who it does click with, they seem to be attracted to the channel and watch more and more because it starts to make logical sense. But other people watch my stuff and they're like, yeah, no, doesn't click with me, and they don't watch. Now, for the people who have tried implementing the system and it didn't work, it's a very low count. Like, we have a less than 2% dropout rate of the platinum program, right? The people who it didn't work for, Either they had some other underlying health conditions that were getting in the way, or two, uh, the plan, they pushed back on the plan. They would, we'd give a plan. We'd say, hey, let's focus on this and this. And they'd say, why? I don't want to do it that way. That's not going to work. I want to do it this way. And there was this kind of back and forth. So in order for this to work, like, we definitely need people to trust us. And we understand not everybody's going to trust us. So we really try to filter out the perfect fit, or we try to filter for the perfect fits. And that's why there is an application process in place, because we're only going to move forward if we are confident that this is going to work for both parties. It's not going to help anybody to get someone to try using the system who is not fully on board, who has watched some of our videos, kind of understands what we do, and is ready to actually go all in and follow the plan that we're going to give them. Let's go for 2 more questions here. Does the program have exercises to calm the nervous system? Yeah, absolutely. Tons of exercises. That's what we specialize in. The term adjustment period really clicked with me. I don't know why. It just really helped. Awesome. Glad it clicked. Oh, here we go. Here's a good one. Did you ever find that people, this is the last question. Did you ever find that people who struggled the most with the emotional side of things developed phobias? I was an athlete my whole life, and now everything makes me anxious and panic. Yep. Absolutely. The emotional struggle of CFS, it's a thing that I think now it's talked about more in the space, but for the longest time, people would only focus on the physical struggles and the physical kind of roadblocks, So the emotional side of your brain is survival mode. It's looking for problems to solve. It's looking for potential danger out there. So even if there's no danger out there, it'll start to look within for danger, right? Because leading up to that, if you were somebody who was a high performer, athletes were high performance. You have high expectations for yourself. You want to do the job properly. You want to get it done right. You want to do a really good job, right? You're very mission driven, very goal oriented, type A personality, can actually have traits of perfectionism. So with these things, it's just a lot of pressure on your brain. Now the world starts to seem like a threat because you feel like you're under the microscope every second, like you have to do things perfectly. And if you don't, you're quite hard on yourself. So once that reaches its limits and you reach your stress threshold, right? Now your brain is primed to look for danger. It's primed that way. Now it starts to look for danger within. And all these sensations that you're feeling, initially, they're limiters that your brain is placing on your body to stop you from adding on more things that is filling up your capacity. That includes stressors, things you can't tangibly touch, things like the pressure you put on yourself. It's giving you symptoms to stop you from going out into the world and doing those things. Now we can start to perceive those symptoms not as limiters on what our body is trying to stop us from doing, but instead as actual danger. Like, oh, I think I'm dying. My body's shutting down. My body's it's out to get me. It's trying to kill me. And the thing is, we can't run away from that, right? You can't run away from sensations within your body. Where do you run? No matter where you go, it's going to be there with you. And so that kind of explains why people with higher emotions are more primed to develop phobias, is because that emotional part of your brain has this massive magnifying glass that is looking for problems to solve. And if there are small problems, it amplifies them and they seem like big problems to the point where they turn into phobias. Like, for example, heart rate. I had a phobia around my heart rate. I thought I was going to have a heart attack if it got higher than a certain amount. I started to not trust my heart. I had a phobia with my lungs and shortness of breath because I thought they would shut down. I had a phobia with my brain fog because I thought I was getting Alzheimer's and I was doing irreversible damage to my brain by having CFS, because I was Googling brain fog and CFS. So that is why people who are higher on the emotional functioning level, they have a higher propensity to develop these phobias. And that is why. But it's also a double-edged sword, because you can learn to use those emotions to your advantage when you learn how to control the knob on how intense you feel emotions. So I still feel emotions, pretty intense emotions, but I'll turn it on. I could turn it down. It's like a dial. I can adjust it up and down. So I can use it to my advantage. If I need to get fired up and I need to get a job done and there's a tight deadline, I can force myself to have high emotions so I get the job done, but I could dial it down after. So that was a little bit of a longer question, but hope you guys enjoyed this training. I try to pour as much as I could into it. We went for almost 2 hours straight here. Lots of drawings, lots of visuals. I tried to explain it as simple as I could. So hopefully it wasn't too much for you guys. Watch these videos over and over again. Shout out to Shannon. I visualized me giving you an interview one day about how you've helped me. You've saved me so many days and didn't even know it. Appreciate you, Shannon. Really appreciate it. Appreciate you, Dolphy. And hopefully something clicked today. And like I said earlier, if you did want some extra guidance for us to go in there and help you build a plan and kind of guide you through this process, everything I just showed you today, this is just scratching the surface of things we can do to help you. Just visit the application page. I'll put a link below this video, and then you'll be able to see if you're a good fit to work with us. If not, just keep watching the free YouTube videos and keep coming to these free trainings and implementing it. And I will see you at the top. Hopefully one day I see you at the Thriver Retreat, where everybody who recovers, we come meet up. We're doing our first one in Portugal in September. There's over 50 people coming, and hopefully we'll see you there one day. So take it easy, guys. See you guys in the next one. And got a great YouTube video coming out for you guys tomorrow. So see you guys in the next one. Cheers.